Good day, my name is Jason Whitesitt, and what I'd like to do is give you a brief tour of my online course, English 217 World Literature. When I was pegged to teach this class last year, I'd never taught it before, either in person or online, so it offered a unique opportunity to kind of start from the beginning, to not think about how to take an in-person class and put it online, but rather start completely fresh with tabula rasa. And with that in mind, I decided to take a different tact. I'd been reading some of Jane McGonigal's work on gamification, and while I didn't pursue that concept completely, I have kind of a hybrid attempt here, where rather than making the course into a complete game, or at least the vehicle for the course, what I did is I kind of established this literary conceit for the vehicle of the class, and that being the Yavapai School of Armchair Travel. So essentially, from the very beginning, I told my students, like, you're in English 217, but you're also within this broader thing called the Yavapai School of Armchair Travel, in which rather than just read these books and talk about this literature, each destination or each text would be a destination to which they could then travel in a way. And it seemed to work really well. I had probably the best participation I've ever had in any class over this last 15 weeks. My students really dived into and delved into the material, and I was incredibly impressed with their participation and engagement. Perhaps even higher than a normal in-person class, which is, for those of you who've taught online before, knows a pretty amazing feat. So what I'm going to do now is just kind of show you around briefly, and along with this conceit of the Yavapai School of Armchair Travel, rather than just send out announcements, I tried to fluff the vocabulary up to keep this bit of role-playing going on throughout the semester. So rather than announcements, I have dispatches. And as you can see, I have a number of them here. And I sent these out generally every Monday, though sometimes I would send them out on Wednesdays and Thursdays as well. And I adopted the tone of a travel guide when I did this. Let's see if we can look at maybe a couple. I'd usually give them a greeting, sometimes in the dialect of the local area that they were at. So if we look over to, so here's one from, we were reading Beowulf, so what is the title of the dispatch, which is the Old English greeting, basically hello. And so I tried to adopt those tones, and the students responded to it very eagerly, I'd say. And I did this throughout. So I had dispatches every Monday, policies, this is your standard syllabus and everything. But then rather than a course schedule, I had the itinerary. And we can pull that up real quick here. And I tried to make it more colorful than I would maybe in a normal class in order to stay along with this theme of like a travel school. So here's the itinerary for the class in general, and broke it up into with colors and everything. So it's not exactly a pamphlet like you'd normally get in something along those lines, but it's approaching that. So as you can see, week 1 was the World Literature Classroom. So I sort of front-loaded my my lectures on how to read literature, what you should be getting out of this stuff in the beginning, and made it seem like almost like a school that you prepare in before you go out into the world. So they were in this lab learning about literature, and from there they moved on. They went to Uruk and read Gilgamesh. Denmark, there they read Beowulf. Japan, we watched a film called The Twilight Samurai. Nigeria, for Chinua Achebe's Things Fall Apart, etc., etc., all the ways over to India, where they read The White Tiger. So everything was laid out there for them in that capacity. So there I had the itinerary, and I already mentioned the destinations, but so here's how everything's broken down into weeks itself. As I mentioned, the World Literature Classroom, and then the first week was Gilgamesh, the poem Gilgamesh. So what the students would do each week or 2 weeks, depending on the length of the text, is their first stop should be the guidebook. Just like you would if you were traveling anywhere, the first thing you want to do is educate yourself about where you're going, how to say hello, where's the bathroom, things like that. This is the literary equivalent. And I use this as an opportunity to provide students with general background information on where they were going. Many students don't know about ancient Sumeria or Babylon, and so in order for them to get the most out of Gilgamesh, they could read the guidebook. As you can see under the guidebook, I have some background reading on just Mesopotamia, some of the civilizations itself. As you see, it's very short, though I've provided hyperlinks if the students would like to go learn more. I also, for each destination, included what I call an in-flight movie. This is a either a documentary or some brief clips, depending on the nature of the destination and what I could find about that destination. In this case, I was fortunate enough to stumble upon these videos produced by, what's the corporation? I forget offhand, but these great videos produced, and they talk about it, and believe it or not, they get you excited about the books before you actually start reading them themselves, which is a pretty amazing thing. I had numerous students report how eager they were to dive into Gilgamesh, this 3,500-year-old text, after watching this stuff, and it's how well produced these videos.
Buddy story. The first road movie.
It's a root source. Gilgamesh is lumped in there in my head with Moby Dick, Beowulf, and Captain America. Plenty of action.
So,
sex, romance,
there's
violence, there's adventure.
Sometimes they're only 10 minutes.
Maybe it survived as long because it can become a little bit of something for everybody.
I think they do a great job.
This is the epic that includes.
So that's an example from Beowulf, or excuse me, Gilgamesh. So they watch the in-flight movie. I list the locals. I call them the locals. These are basically the main characters from the work. And then I also include what I call attractions. These are bonus things that the students aren't required to attend or follow, but are welcome to do so if they like. And here under the attractions for Uruk, ancient Iraq, I have the Sumerian text archive. I also have an area where you can type in your name, it'll come out in cuneiform writing. So just some hopefully fun things that the students are allowed to explore or welcome to explore if they'd like, but not required to. However, the rest of the stuff in the guidebook the students are responsible for. So any of the background reading, the in-flight movie, and the locals, the students all have to know. And when they've gone through all that material, I'll go back to the main page here, they have to pass a passport quiz. Essentially, they've read their guidebook, they've watched the in-flight movie on their flight over into this country, and then they land in customs. And in order to get through customs, you have to get your passport stamped. And this is what the quiz is for. I test them on that guidebook information, like, are you ready now to read the poem Gilgamesh? Have you provided yourself or read enough contextual information so that you can enter this text and walk around in it? And so they'll take a passport quiz. And I do this for each destination. And here you see in this case I've provided the text online. Most of the other ones the students actually bought. One other thing the students had to do for each destination was fill out a guest book. I would pick a location from whatever text we were reading. In this case it's the Cedar Forest from Gilgamesh, and the student would have to sign that guest book, usually about halfway through the text or the poem in this case. And I decided to use VoiceThread with this. I've been using the regular discussion board provided through Blackboard for a number of years, and students were just starting to lag on it. They've gotten tired of using discussion board. I didn't like how it was set up either, where you had to click on links and it wasn't visually stimulating, and students would only do the most basic requirements. You know, if you say write 3 to 5 sentences, they're going to write 3 sentences, and if you say to respond to 2 people, they're going to respond to just 2 people if you're lucky. So to avoid all that, I decided to embed VoiceThread. And so what I would do is I would pick 4 different pictures that related to the questions I wanted answered. Generally, my first question would always be, what do you think of the novel or the text? So if you hit play here, my little video should pop up. Oh, in this case, it's the text first. So I would provide both the text version and a video version in case students for some reason didn't have audio capabilities. And it should pop over in just a second here. Or maybe not. Maybe it's not working. Let's try another one. So that's from Gilgamesh, and you see I have
at the beginning of the poem, what kind of king is Gilgamesh? What are his positive qualities? What are his negative qualities? What do you think?
Note the adventure hat there. I tried to play it up a little. My plans in the future to use a green screen background to kind of place myself in whatever destination they're going to, but I'm working towards that. So I would provide a question, and then the students would register for VoiceThread, something they only had to do once, and from then on they would access this through Blackboard. So this would be here for them, and they would just figure out how they'd like to respond. The neat thing about VoiceThread is students were able to respond with text, with video, with audio, and they could also call in too if they'd like to do that. So they had numerous opportunities. The majority of my students this time responded with text, but in the future I plan to offer some incentives to get them to provide some more videos of their own. But one of the things I like about VoiceThread is it offers the opportunity for everyone to see everyone else. So first of all, this is an online class, but I know what Angie looks like, I know what Irma looks like, I know what Jessica looks like, and so you can get to know people's personalities a little bit more, even if it's just a little tiny, chess piece. That's still better than just an anonymous, text of the person below. And so I think the students engaged with that a great deal as well. They would follow certain people, and they would write a lot more than would normally be the case. And you can kind of see that here. And this is just when they're warming up. This is the second week of the semester. They get even more involved later on. And as I said, I'd have 4 questions and 4 images for each.
The significance of Shama's seduction of Enkidu. What might the woman represent? Do you notice any biblical parallels here? If you're Gilgamesh, why do you consider
and I did this for each destination,
Baba,
like I said.
Brutal ogre lives hundreds of miles
and
away.
it worked much better than your typical discussion board. It allowed me to perpetuate the conceit of the Yavapai School of Armchair Travel, and it was very successful. No problems with VoiceThread either. I was amazed at how well it integrates within Blackboard. So that's the basics of each destination. They would then respond to this and finish the novel itself, and after every 3 texts, or poem in this case I suppose, after every 3 texts they would then have what I call paperwork, which is essentially an exam, and they would do that, and then we'd move on to the next 3. One thing I was concerned about is one of the joys of literature is sitting around or teaching literature, is sitting around in a group and just reading it together and having students ask questions spontaneously, and that isn't really available per se online. Students can embed questions here within the VoiceThread, but it's still not as elegant as I'd like. So one of the solutions I came up with is this Ask Your Guide feature. And I've since cleared these all out after the end of the semester, their responses. But as you can see, I've created an identity, a guide identity for each destination. So for Uruk, which is Gilgamesh, as I said before, you have the guide here. So, good morrow, I am your guide, Sinlikwe Yunini. Please post any questions, thoughts, or answers here that you might have about the Epic of Gilgamesh. I will do my best to respond regularly. Fellow travelers should feel free to offer their own ideas and responses as well. Be sure to subscribe to this forum so as not to miss out on any of my insights and divinations. So basically, students would ask any random questions they have about the novel or the poem, like I'm not understanding why they went to the Cedar Forest, and I then responded to those questions under this or within this role playing of the guide himself. And it was a lot of fun for me, for one, which is always great when you're teaching, and the students seemed to like it as well. And it helped me kind of catch those random questions that might have otherwise gone unasked. And as you see here, I invite other students to provide their own ideas. And so oftentimes, a student would post a question, and before I even had a chance to respond, another student will have gone in and responded to that question with their own ideas. So it was a really neat additional opportunity to engage with the text. And here we have some other ones. This one is from Chinua Achebe's Things Fall Apart. So, and in this case, it's the persona is one of Okonkwo, the main character's wives. She says, "Life to all of you," which is the formal greeting from that tribe. I am Huijo, Okonkwo's youngest and prettiest wife, and your guide to the rich culture of my people, the Igbo. Please post any questions, thoughts, or answers here that you might have about Things Fall Apart, and I will do my best to respond regularly. So as you can see, I try and put a little twist on each, though generally the information is the same, and as I said before, it's a vehicle for them to ask me questions. So looking back over at the other things, we have Ask Your Guide, as I said, View Travel Status. These are the students' grades. Travel Kit. These are Blackboard help, that sort of thing. And that is the class in a nutshell. I'd be happy to talk with any of you in person, and I'm really proud of it. I thought outside the box, and I was rewarded to a great deal. Student engagement, as I said, was greater than perhaps any other literature class I've ever taught, and as I mentioned too, it was fun. It's fun to role play a little bit, to take on these personas, to investigate literature from this angle of a travel agency. And at the very end, all my students received a certificate as well. I don't have that pulled up, but I made up a certificate saying, a graduation from the Yavapai School of Armchair Travel, and the students seem to get a kick out of that too. So that's my class in a nutshell. Like I said, I'm happy to answer any questions or explore it further with any of you that you like. Just contact me. Thanks, and have a great day.